Who the hell are you? Who is Paris? Who the hell is Paris? Is she outspoken? Is she shy, nervous? Is she a bully, cruel and unkind? Is she an overachiever, intense, obsessive?
Do you see any of my students falling in love with me? No. And you know why? Because you don't fall in love with people that make you want to crap your pants.
Is she aspirational, wonderful, protective? Is she a good friend, a bad friend? Well, she's a lot of things.
Paris Geller is a genius, and I will go to the mat on that one.
We all have a version of ourselves painted in our minds, and everyone else has an idea of who we are too. And then there's a moment in our lives where everything changes. Everything crashes, everything burns, and everything you thought about who you are, who you knew yourself to be, is gone. You are not the person you thought you were. And that's exactly what happens to Paris.
I am not going to Harvard. I had sex, but I'm not going to Harvard. Okay, and I have to tell you that if you asked me which of those two events I thought would be the least likely to happen, it would not be the not going to Harvard.
The Bicentennial Speech is one of the most iconic speeches on Gilmore Girls, and it is devastatingly hard to watch and performed so painfully well by Liza Weil. And as I rewatched the speech for the 100th time, I realized I'm not just heartbroken by Paris's rejection letter from Harvard, but by her comments about her first time with Jamie.
Rory?
What, Paris?
I slept with Jamie.
And that's when I realized Paris's speech has a Freudian problem.
You're gonna quote Freud to me? Because I'll push you in front of a moving car.
The Bicentennial Speech occurs in Season 3, Episode 16, titled The Big One, and was written by Amy Sherman Palladino. The major theme of the episode centers around identity. How does our identity change, remain, or even shatter when major life events are thrust upon us?
Don't say dirty, it's too easy.
The first major life event is in reference to the title of the episode, The Big One. Rory and her classmates are anxiously awaiting the arrival of college acceptance letters. A big envelope announces a student's acceptance into a university, while the small envelope declares a rejection letter. The second life event our characters grapple with is their sexual maturity. Sookie discovers she's pregnant with her first child. Lorelai sees Max for the first time after ending their engagement. Paris has sex with Jamie for the first time, while Rory admits that she has not explored a sexual relationship with Dean or Jess. The Freudian complex underlying these romantic relationships and their repercussions is represented in the Madonna...
Harlot. Nah. Woman of accommodating morals. Too long.
Hot mutton.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
I don't fully understand what the YouTube algorithm has to say about swearing, so just bear with me. Let me explain. First identified by Sigmund Freud, who called it psychic impotence, it is a psychological complex that is said to develop in men who see women as either saintly Madonnas or debased women of the night. The key word here being either. There is no space or nuance for a woman to possess qualities of both. She either must be the Madonna, virginal, motherly, and sacred object, or the woman of the night, temptress, dissolute, an object of satisfaction. Either way, women are seen as objects in both regards, but serving different and separate roles. It's not just the men that see women this way, but society, media, and individuals can cast themselves in these roles too, which is exactly what we see Paris do during her bicentennial speech. Almost every part of her being has been building towards this university, this future, and with one small envelope, her dream is shattered.
Five generations of Gellers have gotten into Harvard. Even if I was the Billy Carter of the family, the name is still supposed to carry some weight.
That's not the only part of her identity that's been shattered. Her relationship to her own sexuality has altered as well. To this point, Paris has struggled to see herself as attractive, dateable, let alone sexy. And in some ways, she has accepted this perception of herself.
You noticed it too, right? That we're sort of more friends material than dating material?
Yes, I did notice. I have excellent deductive skills.
And instead, very intensely at times, kept her focus on school.
I study, and I think about studying, and then I study some more.
That is until Jamie came along. Paris is used to rejection, but she isn't used to someone being romantically interested in her. It flies completely over her head when Jamie asked her out for the first time.
Paris?
What?
What do you mean, what? He just asked you out on a date.
You did not.
Because that concept is so unfathomable to her. Then proceeds to shove Rory into the closet before Jamie arrives for their first date. When she tells Rory she had sex with Jamie for the first time, she's quick to over-intellectualize the situation and seeks out Rory for some emotional guidance.
I went over there to study, and he lit a fire, and then we did it. What are your thoughts on that?
She herself is unclear about how she feels or how she should feel about having sex for the first time.
Are you pro?
Well,
Con?
Will?
Undecided?
And then she gets the news.
I got the tiny envelope. The one that reads, "Sorry, Paris. We're not interested. Try again next year. Love, Harvard."
Two long-standing foundations of her identity have been altered within days of each other. She is in fact seen as sexually attractive, and she is not going to Harvard. And while we know as audience members these are two completely unconnected events, Paris can't help but conflate the two.
I had sex, so now I don't get to go to Harvard.
Paris, come on.
She's never had sex. She'll probably go to Harvard. She's a shoo-in.
I can't believe I slept with Jamie. I'm a slut.
No, you're not. You love him.
What if he doesn't love me anymore? What if he doesn't think I'm special anymore?
Freud wrote, "Where such men love, they have no desire, and where they desire, they cannot love." Paris repeats this very fear back to Rory, that Jamie will no longer desire her. In her mind, by sleeping with Jamie, she has unwittingly made herself a woman of questionable morals, and therefore undesirable to both Harvard and Jamie. Because Rory hasn't had sex, she is the virginal Madonna, and quote-unquote worthy of Harvard. Paris is prone to exaggeration, and even more so in a state of disarray. So the question then becomes, is Paris just being dramatic, or does the series share the same sentiment? In the words of Mark Field, we should be wary of taking the statement of a single character at face value. You can't quote Iago and say, as Shakespeare said no such thing. Iago, a character, did. We have to decide whether a character is telling us an intended message from the show, or just something about their particular character. So, what does the episode and the series as a whole have to say? Let's travel back in time to Rory's first day at Chilton, and specifically, her getting bullied.
They kept calling me Mary.
Virgin Mary. It means they think you look like a goody-goody.
Yes, the show has been making this comparison since season 1, and has been directly contrasting Rory with more promiscuous and assertive characters like Madeline, Louise, Tristan, and Shane. An earlier scene in the episode has Louise proudly displaying her hickeys from an evening that preoccupied her from her studies, which resulted in a lower grade.
Michael Mason, worth every wrong answer.
A scene that foreshadows the far more dramatic events that eventually unfold for Paris later in the episode. The Madonna Woman of the Night comparison is on display through Sookie's storyline too. Sookie excitedly comes to the realization that she's pregnant, only to be disappointed by Jackson's response. In Sookie's case, her harlot takes the form of her profession as chef, a reminder that food is tied to sensuality, passion, and risk. The initial discovery of her pregnancy separates Sookie from her cooking, her metaphorical, sensual, and passionate side.
The food was really bad? Oh, honey, it was just, well, yeah, it was really that bad. I don't understand it.
Pregnancy hormones have altered her perception of taste, and she creates horrid tasting food before being sent home.
Okay, now I get the sewery reference.
She tries again to lean into her sensuality by planning a romantic evening for her and Jackson to celebrate the news of her pregnancy, only for Jackson to completely bypass the celebration and head straight into panic mode.
Did you see his eyes? Tasmanian devil.
They're both transitioning into a new identity as parents, but Jackson has swung to the extreme by putting Sookie's pregnancy on a delicate, fragile pedestal.
Have you tried slapping him?
No, he won't let me lift my arm above my head in case it stretches, baby. This stinks. We never even got to celebrate.
And while Jackson's concern is somewhat endearing and sweet, it's still hurtful to Sookie. She needs him to understand a fundamental truth about herself. Just because she is adopting this new responsibility and identity as mother, it does not mean that she loses her identity as chef.
I'm not getting rid of my knives, Jackson. I'm a chef. I have to have knives.
In the interview for her Vogue cover shoot, Rihanna said this: "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought to myself, there's no way I'm gonna go shopping in no maternity aisle. I'm sorry, it's too much fun to get dressed up. I'm not gonna let that part disappear because my body is changing." Jackson needs to accept all sides of Sookie as both the caring, capable mother and as the creative, passionate chef. Now Lorelai is dealing with some relationship tensions of her own. She runs into Max for the first time since ending their engagement, and while Max tries to play it cool and insists he's over it, the pair end up kissing. Their intense sexual attraction to each other is often what causes them to act against their better judgment. Lorelai's Madonna Woman of the Night comparisons may not be as obvious in this episode, but only a few episodes later, Max puts Lorelai in the role of Temptress.
I can't be held responsible for what I do around you. I mean, you're like a mythological creature that casts some kind of spell on me. It makes me act stupid.
And she leans into it.
I'm not gonna attack you.
Her name, after all, has its origins in Germanic folklore, Die Lorelei, an entrancing, seductive siren who lures seamen to their death. Die Lorelei by Heinrich Heine, translated by A.Z. Foreman. I know not if there is a reason why I am so sad at heart. A legend of bygone ages haunts me and will not depart. The air is cool under nightfall, the calm Rhine courses its way. The peak of the mountain is sparkling with evening's final ray. The fairest maiden is sitting so marvelous up there. Her golden jewels are shining, she combs her golden hair. With a golden comb she combs it and sings a song as well, whose melody binds a wondrous and overpowering spell. In his little boat, the boatman is seized with a savage woe. He'd rather look up at the mountain than down at the rocks below. I think that the waves will devour the boatman, and boat is won, and this by her song's sheer power, fair Lorelei has done. Max is a sailor trying desperately not to be swayed by Lorelai's enthralling song, and attempts to block her advancements with various pieces of furniture. Now, I'm not saying that Max has a complex he needs to overcome. I actually think he's making the responsible decision in keeping his distance from Lorelai, but I do think the comparisons he makes to her being some kind of seductive, mythical creature, coupled with the origins of her name, make for some interesting symbolism that relates back to this episode's themes surrounding promiscuity versus chastity. If Lorelai is the seductive siren, Paris is becoming sexually active, and Sookie is transitioning into motherhood, then Rory is the counter in the narrative. She embodies the pure, chaste, and innocent. I do want to pause for a moment and say that while Rory does initially freak out about Paris's news,
Oh, God.
she is a really good friend to Paris in this moment. She handles her conversation with Paris in such a thoughtful and kind way. When Rory overcomes her initial shock, she regroups and asks questions that relate to Paris's sense of safety, comfort, and feelings around the experience, rather than making any of her own personal judgments.
Were you safe?
Yes, it was a regular after-school special.
Was he nice to you?
Yes, he was very nice to me.
Maybe it was the time for the two of you.
I just wish I had the data to back it up.
Some things can't be analyzed.
In fact, Rory is the one that tries to separate herself from the comparisons Paris is trying to forge between the two of them.
You can't judge what's right for you against what's right for me. I mean, we are different, and Jamie and Jess are different.
But the problem comes in with Lorelai's response. She overhears the two girls discussing their sexual experiences, or lack thereof, and makes this comment.
I've got the good kid.
The Women of Questionable Morals podcast captures my feelings on this line pretty well.
Allegedly, Lauren Graham pushed back against that line and didn't want to say it, implying that having consensual sex with a partner that she was in love with and was safe with and felt comfortable with somehow made her bad or evil was appalling. She wanted the line to read more like, oh, I've got the good kid, in the sense that the way Rory supported Paris through it.
There is no one on this planet that will interpret that line as, oh, I'm good, I'm so happy my daughter is a supportive friend. No. You read it as, thank God my daughter is not a slut.
The I've got the good kid line inherently implies that Paris is the bad kid.
Nixon's bad seed.
And since Lorelai also had sex as a teenager, she is likewise pitting herself in the bad kid category. And this brings us back to the question. So, what message is the show trying to convey here?
It's blank.
It's the wrong side.
In many forms of media, the women of the night are considered less than, and they will be punished for their wickedness, literally or metaphorically, where the virginal Madonnas will be rewarded and praised for their virtue. In the final scene of the episode, Rory receives a mailbox full of college acceptance letters, and Lorelai says,
apparently, you're the biggest virgin in the world.
With a smile on her face as she hands a stack of acceptance letters to Rory. The reason Paris didn't get into Harvard is likely due to the disastrous interview she had with recruiters.
The grades were there, but ooh, if it weren't for that pesky interview.
Experiencing a marked drop.
This has anything to do?
Whoa, just let me finish my thought here.
But Paris.
Please.
And while the episode briefly mentions this,
They had to really not like me for me not to get in. Paris. It's like they know me or something.
I don't think we can ignore the Madonna Woman of the Night comparisons that are made throughout the entirety of the episode and the series leading up to this point.
Girls like Shane, what is it with them? Don't they see what they look like? I know they have mirrors.
I can't help but feeling, by the end of this episode, Rory and her outwardly virtuous nature has been rewarded.
Pack your chastity belt, Gilmore. You're going to Harvard.
And Paris and her so-called promiscuity has been punished. You sleep with your long-term boyfriend one time and...
That's what you get, folks, for making whoopee.
The show's attitude around sex certainly evolves throughout the course of its 7 seasons, and by extension the revival, for better...
You've no right to be repulsed by my sex life.
And for worse at times.
He's not your dean. He's Lindsay's dean. You're the other woman.
But that's a much longer video. Even omitting a few of Lorelai's lines would have changed the undertones of the episode. Specifically, I have the good kid, and you're the biggest virgin ever. As well as slightly reworking some of Paris's lines in her bicentennial speech, so she can still shock the audience with the reveal that she had sex for the first time and didn't get into Harvard, but doesn't intrinsically link the two events as cause and effect. Despite the trouble and heartbreak some of our characters feel in this episode, there is still hope. Paris is accepted into several other prestigious schools. Sookie doesn't give up her knives. Even Louise, despite her occasional slacking, is later admitted into Tulane, a highly selective university. The Madonna Woman of the Night complex ultimately comes down to the division of self. Sometimes that division is how others see us, sometimes it's how we see ourselves. Our job in this lifetime is not to shape ourselves into some ideal we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. Stephen Pressfield. So let this be a reminder. You don't have to give up your passions to be a parent. Not everyone will recognize your hard work, but the right people will.
You gave me this beat to find the story, not to kowtow and make nice and...
Killer!
What?
Way to go.
Your journey is your own. Others have their own path to walk. And above all else, surround yourself with people that see and accept you for everything that you are.
I love you, Paris Geller. You are the strongest, most infuriating, most exciting woman I have ever met in my entire life. And there is no way I'm gonna let you go. Anywhere you go, I'm going.
You're saying that if I go to Alaska, you're gonna move there too?
Well, I've always wanted to go dog sledding.
That's ridiculous. With your low threshold for cold?
I'll wear warmer clothes.